I'm passionate about entrepreneurship through acquisition because so far it has been like a huge net positive for me. As soon as they heard that I didn't have any experience, they were just like, nope, I don't want to talk to you anymore. Something will raise the flag. It'll either be like, if this is true, this is a unique business, or something about this unique, I really like this, or that doesn't quite sound right. Like that doesn't fit.
Recently, we've been buying off supplyhouse.com, and we've been able to get plumbing, HVAC, and electrical stuff off there. And my biggest concern was timeliness. Like, hey, if I need this thing pretty quick, can I get it? And you for sure can. So that was awesome. So deliveries are fast, they ship coast to coast, and you can call them and you can get expert support with real people, which is awesome. So check out supplyhouse.com for buying the stuff you need.
Welcome back to Owned and Operated. John is out gallivanting around, I think it's Ireland this week, which is awesome. I've heard it's really beautiful out there, and I'm sure he's having a great time. So we have an amazing guest here today. We have Rory Tyer. Tyer, did I say that right?
Yep.
Awesome. How are you doing, Rory?
I'm doing really well. I'm in a hotel in Cleveland, actually, right now at a trade show.
Very cool. So Rory owns a nursery out in South Carolina that you purchased how long ago?
May 7th was the date.
May 7th. So you're fairly new, but tell us a little bit about that acquisition. So what does it entail?
Yeah, great question. So it's an IGC, Independent Garden Center, and the former owner was just ready to retire. So I've been kind of searching on a very part-time basis while working full-time remotely for, probably 2 years or more before I started talking with him. We had moved to Greenville 2021. We've been buying plants from the nursery. I really liked it. I had looked at a bunch of different brokered deals and a few other things and got kind of, disenchanted with the brokered deal process. Either the valuation expectations I felt like were not reasonable, or it was a good business and therefore was going to become like a competitive bidding process. And I just did not find in myself that I wanted to be part of that. And so I ended up building a bunch of lists of local businesses that I just thought seemed interesting. And I really wanted something local, like within the 30-minute radius of my house, because I have been doing a good bit of traveling for my job, and I've got 3 young girls and just didn't want to keep doing that. And so, and we love Greenville, so we weren't about to relocate for a business. I don't really know what. One day we went to the nursery and bought some plants, and I just was thinking, like, it seems like a great business. Let me email the owner and see if I can at least ask him some questions about what it's like to run this, because it's not an industry I have ever worked with or know anything about. And the first time I got him on the phone, I was just asking him some questions, and he was sort of like, why do you want to know this stuff? And so I just laid it out. I was like, well, I'm looking for a business owner that wants to retire because I like to own a business. I don't know if a nursery is something I want to own, but if you are at all interested in that and you think you're, at or near retiring, I'd love to ask you some more questions and talk about that. And he was open to it. And so pretty quickly from that point, we started having a bunch of conversations. This was in the summer of last year. And I think, so between about August and then we signed an LOI at the end of December. And so it went pretty slowly for a number of reasons, which I'm happy to talk about. But then we closed at the beginning of May.
That's amazing. I think that's passed over by so many searchers now today, is just the idea that, hey, I need to go pound pavement and walk and talk and network in the community I'm in or the community I want to be in. And everyone just goes straight for brokers. But those deals end up being very, they're very expensive. You're paying a lot for what you actually get, and they're difficult. They're highly contested and lots of competition. What industries were you looking at prior to going down into this specific one? Was there anything that you were targeting? So I was talking to someone yesterday about it, and I said, man, I used to look at the most random things, and now I'm in HVAC. But did you have a genre of businesses you were looking at, or what was the sequence?
I was working at a large professional services and accounting firm And for a time, I thought about starting my own consulting firm. I looked into buying accounting firms. I had a conversation early on with Patrick Dichter, who, a lot of people know from social media about what could go into buying a firm. And I honestly, in like brick and mortar retail, I would have told you is one of like a few things, along with like restaurants and maybe something else that I did not want.
Yeah.
And looking back now, I think I just had this perception that either they're getting crushed by e-commerce, or if they're not getting crushed, they've just got razors and it's a headache to staff. And, with the nursery, I think with a garden center, I think there's some uniqueness where, the most likely person to crush you is going to be like a garden center at a big box store like Lowe's or Home Depot. But what I've discovered and what I've realized is part of the thing that drew me to this nursery in the first place is they're not really competing with them. We're not really competing with them. Like we're aiming at a little more of a high-end experience that doubles down on variety and service and quality. And so, I looked at there was this guy who was basically a consultant working with nursing homes and helping them like fill vacancies and get more financially healthy. And he had developed kind of the beginnings of like a productized Zoom course that he would take cohorts of staff through. I looked at a company that was basically a design firm for big wooden trusses and structures. I looked at some plumbing companies. I looked at a brand brokerage licensing company where they would, connect products with people they wanted to license their product or vice versa. A lot of different. I took out to lunch the owner of a really niche construction company in Greenville. Did underwater construction. I was like, I don't know how much more unique. Like, this is not just some random general contractor. Like, there's something going on here that is really unique. And I was all over the map because for me, it was honestly a little bit of like, who will talk to me? Like, I'm willing to learn just about anything. And in my career, the firm I was working for was called Horn. It was a very large CP firm. And I was doing a lot of consulting and coaching with business owners. So I think when you do proprietary outreach, like I think what stops a lot of people is either they're just not comfortable with cold calling if you don't have sales experience, or in my case, I was comfortable sitting across the table from a business owner and having to come across like I understood way more about them and their business than I probably did. And you figure out real quick the way to do that is just to ask good questions, and they'll tell you what matters to them, what's important. And then if you're able to remember that stuff and connect some dots and repeat it back to them, you can become a trusted partner. And so I just leverage some of that when having these business owner conversations. Like I know what pressures they're facing because I'm in the trenches with them, dealing with mostly on the people side, but obviously you get exposure to lots of other things too. So yeah, that's a long way to answer. I was open to anything. I've heard people say,
do you feel
because I knew I wanted to stay in Greenville, I was like, I've got to be open. And, that means I'm going to have to learn. And,
I think that's a really accurate thing to say, though, is a lot of people try to find industry and location, and it's so much harder than being agnostic in one of those two, right? So industry, but anywhere, or location, but anything. And it sounds like you kind of hit that. And with that, though, we talk a lot about kind of going through the motions, and not that I wanted to waste brokers' times, but do you feel like that kind of outreach and talking about business models and seeing P&Ls and trying to work towards a purchase through other industries helped you in the industry you ended up buying in?
Yeah, I do. Even just getting to read CIMs, and then over time you start to develop a sense for like, something will raise the flag. It'll either be like, oh, if this is true, this is a unique business, or something about this unique, I really like this, or that doesn't quite sound right. Like that doesn't fit. There's some pattern recognition that you start to develop. I think just like there's a way to get confident talking to business owners, business brokers, the ones that are good and know what they're doing. Their job is to have an appropriate firewall between you and the owner, because they don't want to waste the owner's time. And so learning how to represent yourself and learning how to overcome like very common objections, like, oh, you don't have industry experience, or, oh, you're not, you're just an independent person. You're not backed by some fund, or you don't already own a company. You've never owned a company before, aside from,
So, because I had this, like I said, I was having I was having this conversation yesterday, actually, and it was a new searcher who's getting out there, and he's getting his MBA, and he's kind of going through the motions, and he's like, I want to buy. And I said, one of the hardest things that you need to start trying to figure out how to overcome is the broker objection, or the objection from the bank that says you don't have industry experience. Why should we trust you? Where's your ethos behind this? And so, like, was there anything special that you did? Did you create the website with the searcher and like the goat looking over the mountaintop with the sunrise in the background and says, we have capital, like all the silly things I always see. Yeah. Was there anything kind of that you did in that realm to help legitimize yourself? Like, I'm not wasting anyone's time. I really do want to buy.
Yeah, no, honestly, I mean, and I was searching while working full time. And so I didn't want to broadcast so publicly, like, and have a website with like my face and stuff on it. So like I made a website and a domain, but initially I had this, I thought I was going to start writing a bunch of blog articles, like about stuff related to business succession and transition, and kind of both from a buyer and a seller perspective. And I had this content plan in my mind, and like, it never panned out. I mean, it was really inconsistent. I think the times that it worked, I was able to talk about the consulting and coaching work I had done. So I was able to say, here are examples of the ways that I currently work with business owners. And what I have realized is that this has given me a really valuable insider perspective on the kinds of things that I would need to deal with if it were my business and if it were my team having these challenges. And so as a result, I have a ton of, not so formally playbooks, but just like tools and perspectives, and there's stuff that could happen that wouldn't necessarily catch me off guard because I've seen it before. And so in my case, I leaned into that of like, hey, I have conversations with business owners all the time. Here's some of the results that I've gotten for them and their teams. And I've just realized I would love the chance to do this with my own business. And then I think it is helpful if you can share something that you have learned about the industry. Like you're not asking questions that some Googling could have answered for you, but you're clearly building on some knowledge base. So the formula is something like, so I understand that blank is typically a challenge. Like, what has that been like for you over 12 months?
I think,
and so like in the construction industry, like I did a lot of consulting with commercial construction companies. For them, it's workforce shortage, and it's like we just cannot find people. So you bring that up and ask about how's hiring been, or like how's retention, or like whatever, and you're going to get an earful in response, and it immediately builds some like, oh, this guy gets it. This is a very relevant problem, and you got to find baseline knowledge. Like if you are aware that it's a business that depends on a commodity in some way for its input, and that price has been really high, that's like easily locatable information, and you should be able to ask, like, I know the price of wood has gone up a lot over the past whatever. How have you been able to pass on that? How's that affected your margins? Just those kinds of like category questions and I would kind of tell, this is reminding me, I would try to model for the broker exactly how I planned to communicate with the seller. So I would say, I would love to get a chance to ask questions about this, or to ask a question like this, so that they could it was almost a role play for the sake of the broker. Like, this is what it's going to be like to put me in conversation with your seller. I promise it's not going to be a waste of time. And that didn't always work. A few times it didn't work. It was because they mandated you have a certain amount of liquid funds before they would even open the gate. And they weren't interested in you saying, well, I know a ton of people who invest, and I know this. I mean, they just didn't want them. I mean, that's a choice they can make. So, and then sometimes I just didn't. I mean, there were a few off-market people where I got through on the phone, and as soon as they heard that I didn't have any experience, they were just like, "No, I don't want to talk to you anymore." And I mean, in those situations, my thought was, that's not really a me problem. It's a pipeline problem. I need to be finding enough potential opportunities that, like, some percentage of them will result in conversations, and some percentage of those might go further. Like any kind of marketing or sales funnel, like you have to go back to the top and figure out how to make that top bigger.
I mean, that's all absolutely amazing advice, to be honest. Like I said, I had this conversation yesterday, and these are the questions that come up, and these are hey, as a journey as a searcher, and as someone who's potentially buying a business, how do you get past the guard, the broker guard that they put up, and how do you show that you are a serious buyer? Because they get hundreds and hundreds of tire kickers. So very interesting. Awesome. So you bought so what's the difference between a nursery and a garden center?
the garden center. Yeah. Great question. Functionally, well, I think historically a nursery is a place where plants are like grown. And so a lot of garden centers do have growing operation, which is a very, it's just a different business model, different risks, different CapEx needs, different inputs, different level of knowledge needed for your team. We are only a retail operation. So we buy and resell, buy it wholesale, sell it retail. And so I think garden center is typically kind of a broader term where you get tools, fertilizers, soils, gifts, often, statues, pottery, and plants. And that describes us. I don't know. I think at some point back in the day, the business was called South Pleasantburg Nursery and Garden Center. And at some point it just got shortened to South Pleasantburg Nursery. And at this point, I'm like, we have a decent Google profile and reviews. Like, I'm just not interested in messing with it.
Yeah, of course.
But I am, one of the things I am doing is going through a rebranding right now. And, it was important to me to have a very, very clear, visual mark that was separate from, so that eventually in the future, I'd want to change something about that, that basic visual brand would be able to stay the same. But yeah, I think a lot of people, the word nursery is a place where babies get looked after, right? It's where I took my kids when my wife went back to work after having them. So yeah, I don't know that in a lot of people's minds, there's much of a for that growing aspect, which we don't do.
Okay. So there's no growing, you're buying wholesale and then you're reselling it.
Yep.
Who's the market customer? So most of the business I've looked at that are in this field have been full blown nurseries, and the interest there, for me at least, the benefit was right. You grow for 6 months out of the year. They're generally growing some kind of specific product like mums or something. And they sell it all in a seasonality type of a play, almost like any kind of crop. And then you just spend the rest of the year like skiing in Vail and riding off into the sunset. Though I'm sure it's actually more of a, oh crap, we don't have money now type of problem. That being said, kind of that business model is very simple, right? You grow it, and then you sell to yourself. Who are you selling to? Are you selling to landscape architects? Are you selling B2B to, landscape groups, or is it all retail customers? Mom and pop wanted to put some
vast majority is retail customers. We do get, and so I would say like mid to higher end, homeowners and people that just want, like you think of somebody who is living in an apartment, right? Like you wouldn't consider them, like they're not a homeowner, they're renting. In a lot of cases, we wouldn't consider them necessarily a higher end, depending on their income and the state of the apartment, but like they really like plants as a hobby. And so I would say anybody that's a hobbyist that likes plants, but residential customers. And then a quirk of this business is because of where we're located, it's really convenient for a lot of companies to just come buy plants there at retail and presumably to their customers. So there's a company that does flower beds and containers that they'll come and buy flowers pretty frequently. There's several landscape companies that I know on site. I'll see their trucks, or I know the dude that he's got like a one crew operation. And that's just a fact, in retail, in-person retail, your location is so important. And for us, we are the only nursery of any scale that's actually within the city limits of Greenville. And so it's a really easy jumping off point because a lot of the people that you want to work with are in or right around Greenville. And there's a couple other great nurseries outside the city limits in a couple different directions. But you have to kind of go out of your way to go there if you're near the part of the city where we are. Was that a surprise to you, or was that a deciding factor when you chose that business?
Yeah, like right, brick and mortar, they say location, location, location. Like that's everything. And so, but at the same time, the nicheness of the business kind of would drive some people to your location versus the location itself. But surprisingly, it was more important than you thought.
I will be the first one to be hesitant about remote staffing agencies, but honestly, Sagan's been pretty great. We started working with Sagan a few months ago to place a few more complicated positions inside accounting and HR. They had great candidates in a week, and we were able to make our hires in under 2.5 weeks, which was awesome. Both of those candidates have now started, and they've been awesome members of the team. So we're super grateful. Make sure you talk to Sagan. If you're interested in learning more, go to sagango.com. SAGANGO.com.
Yeah, I think, we also are known locally for having like a really big selection, a lot of variety. Mm-hmm. And that's a double-edged sword, because that means at any given point you have a lot of cash tied up in your inventory. And that's some of our ongoing, some of the biggest learning curve for me has been around like at a philosophical level, how do you buy? Because I've got buyers that have been doing this for a long time, and some of their philosophies are great. Some of their gut feel and intuition is great. And some of it is not as data driven as I think we could be. And it was only in January, actually while we were under LOI, the former owner transitioned to a new point of sales and inventory management system. And so for the first time, I would say we have like very reliable and easily accessible data to help make purchasing decisions. And so there's a whole change management process around like, how do we now use that data to buy, rather than just having it be something that's there, but that we don't. And of course, not all, data is never honey. And so that raises a challenge once in a while. But like, I think I was surprised. I was surprised that, as an example, I thought they had like a commercial discount, because a lot of nurseries will have like, hey, if you're a commercial person, you set up an account and you get some kind of a discount off retail. And they used to have one. And when COVID hit, they discontinued it. Because, they were like, we don't know where they assumed everything's going to fall off a cliff. Of course, 2020 and then 2021 was a huge boon in the outdoor living world, like in general. And so then they just didn't bring the discount back. They just said, we don't have a need to bring it back. The brand is not known locally in fact, I did a clearance event a few weeks ago, just because I inherited a way more inventory than we need. And I was like, I would like to have an infusion of cash in a season where we don't normally get that infusion, because this was at the end of August, which is normally extremely slow. And it was the first clearance event the business had to end. Like, I didn't fully even appreciate that, but it's such a brand marker. Like, hey, you're a premium brand. We're not known for sales. We're not known for discounts. That was a big surprise. Like, I kind of sensed it, but I didn't fully understand how important that has been to the margins and that the business has been able to command.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much to unpack there. So I think I'm not going to touch this point, but, like even the fact that the goods themselves are perishable, like having so much cash flow locked up into a perishable good that's, essentially fickle to some extent, right? They could die, the heat wave, disease, like there's so much that could go happen, which I'm sure you're aware of.
Hailstorm.
But in terms of what I want to touch on is more so seasonality. Is this I would assume there's some seasonality to the business, but do you see winter peaks, summer peaks? What does that look like?
If I remember correctly, I think it's like 70% of our revenue comes in between like the end of March and Independence Day. And then you're pretty dead over the summer. We have some interesting aspects of like, we sell actually a good number of fountains, and we also have a bunch of like water gardening stuff. So water plants, we sell koi fish, pond health and construction supplies. So there's stuff that actually during the summer people are thinking about, because the water feature is like a really nice relief. And then there's another bump in revenue in the fall, which we're kind of just getting into now. So after Labor Day, and then that lasts until kind of up till Thanksgiving, like mid-November before Thanksgiving. And we do historically, the business has not done a whole lot of seasonal stuff, because there's another business in town. It's another garden center that is a lot more of a gift shop, and they have like a permanent Christmas, and so they go like all out on the decorations, and the owner historically has just said that there's me to try to invest in more, but we'll do like and some wreaths and some things, and then so really after Thanksgiving until end of March, it's like fairly dead.
Yeah, because I could see Christmas being, a boom with the Christmas tree and then the garden center products that would come from that. So we talked about it a little bit offline. So one of my favorite parts of this show is, right, as people initially bought businesses, we've asked them, or John in the initial shows asked them questions, and then 3 years later circle back, see where they are, how they're doing, and ask them kind of similar questions. Did it work? What did you expect? What didn't you expect? And it's really fun to see the kind of vast differences. So as you've owned the business 4 or 5 months now, right? You have some big rocks up ahead. What do you see as like the next big step that you're going to take in this business to get it to the next level? Assuming that you want to grow, that this isn't a lifestyle business.
One thing is we launched landscape design and installation. And so previously we had a few team members that would do that stuff kind of their own time. Mm-hmm. And a few of those folks are working like a ton of hours. So what it meant is they just got very time. And so it's a comment to me being like, hey, if we brought this in and like their prices were kind of low. And I said, I think we need to raise these prices. And if you're part of our brand, that gives us a lot of justification to charge more in price. You'll get some of your personal time back. I see like a better career path for you. And I think we can, my kind of mental models around how I think a customer journey should look. And even like when you communicate things like price and scope to somebody, what should that proposal look like? Like in B2B sales, we're used to putting almost too much thought into like, what is the PDF that we send over that walks through the project? And I'm like, if I put even a little bit of that thought into something that's templated in Canva, which is what we do now, and it's around a landscape design, like, I mean, I think that will probably go to a lot of other people who are smaller shops operating the space, that level of thought into what the customer's getting. So that's one thing is I see growing design and installation pretty significantly. I think there are some price, not necessarily, I mean, some price increases probably, especially in the spring, but mostly implementing some kind of like trade, like variable pricing as an example. So like you have a perennial at a certain size and it's like, hey, if you buy 3 or more, there's this price point. Well, if you only buy 1, there's this price point, which is like $1 or $2 higher. And so you're actually subconsciously encouraging people to buy more, which improves your turns, makes it people like they spent less money. Oh, great. I got 3 and I didn't have to get them for that price. I got them for this lower price. Well, then as long as you're protecting your margins on that lower price, you're giving them, it's kind of like a win-win. And so that is a little bit complicated, involves a lot of adjusting things and retagging and creating some new signage to make sure that's not confusing for the consumer. But that definitely needs to happen. And then, okay, so that's like the relatively near term. What
about marketing? Like, so is it?
Yeah. So that's also happening.
Because I can't imagine a lot of the old timer, we've done it this way for 40 years. I can't imagine they're utilizing new marketing techniques, driving reviews.
No.
So what does that look like for you? Where are you driving that kind of business?
When the new point of sales and inventory system is also maintains customer data a lot better than their previous system did. And so I've retrained all of anybody that runs the register to like always ask for phone number, name, phone number, and email address as well. And then that's connected to MailChimp. So I launched an email newsletter, which we'd never had before. And I also launched a membership program called SP Club. And I'm experimenting with, I'm not giving discounts necessarily as part of the program, which, a lot of stores like, hey, if you're in the club, you get 10% off or whatever. We may do some special occasion discounts for some things, but the main draw for that has been, hey, if you're in the SP Club, within 24 hours of us getting a new shipment of plants, you'll get an email and a text alert with some pictures and some information about what we got. And so you will know, if we get stuff on a Tuesday, you don't have to wait until Saturday or call the store and see, hey, what have you gotten? People do get a coupon on their birthday. That's automated through MailChimp and through the system. And we have a family festival we're doing. So it's another marketing is I'm doing an event on October 5th with a petting zoo and some stuff for kids and families. Because one of the biggest demographics in Greenville is young families. And the nursery has not historically tried to lean into that. And there's a ton of stuff you can do there with classes, with creative activities on site for kids to spend their time doing with these kinds of events. And so that is part of the marketing plan, is to try to do more events. And I would say the newsletter. And then I've got a couple local brand partnerships, like my daughter's elementary school. We sponsored their PTA. So we've got a banner hanging up in the ball field, and another local school, I've have a banner in their drive-through line. And we'll probably try to do some more of those just to get because I run into people all the time. The nursery's been here. Next year will be the 60th anniversary of it being in Greenville. And I still run into people all the time who are like not new here, but they didn't know about us. And so that's part of my thesis for the business was, okay, post COVID, this industry did really well. The economy's shifting. Like, I think we may have to fight for our revenue a little more the next 5 years than they did the last 5. But one of those tools is doing any marketing at all. Like, doing any newsletters at all, doing any local partnerships. Yeah. Like doing any. And so, so that's some of the marketing stuff that we're doing right now. So when I think about changes, and growth, I think in terms of like, what are we doing right now? What do I see for the spring? And then there's like a 2-year cliff. So the 2-year thing that's coming is I've got several team members who are at or near retirement age. And some of them are some of the like harder worker, more knowledgeable team members. And so, in some ways, I think some of our harder times are potentially in front of us because I've got this runway that hopefully is a couple of years, but you never know, right? Personal circumstances or health or whatever could change. But I've got that runway to try and document as much as I can and implement just some more standardization around roles and responsibilities and training, because it was very informal. There's really no formal staff structure that I inherited. Then the 5 to 10 year thing is like, I think the trend for in-person retail garden centers is to be more of an experience. So give people more reasons to come, more reasons to stay, so that you can do a better job of increasing average order value and sending people home with more stuff. And so you want to become more like a destination that people like to meander and have events and classes accordingly. And that requires a lot of infrastructure investment. The building that I have right now is it's extremely old. Like almost 60 years old. So like, I can't really change anything without suddenly tripping a ton of local building codes that I'm all of a sudden responsible for. Like we own 1 bathroom on like an 8-acre property. And like, so for this event that we're about to do, in fact, I need to do this. I got to go like reserve a couple porta potties just to make sure, because people are going to be hanging out longer. But like the 5 to 10 year vision, I'd like to pay down my loans, at least the 7A loan much, faster than the 10-year amortization. If I could do it in 5, that'd be incredible. But like eventually someday, what really should happen is the building should be raised and we should rebuild on a different part of the property that's a little bit more removed from where there's a flood zone, so that we can then have like the building in one section and all of the parking and the entrance in one particular spot. Because, foot traffic flow is super important to, shrinkage control and customer experience. And right now it's a little bit of like a choose your own adventure when you come onto the property. And some of that is the charm. Like if you want to come, get out of your car and like, you don't want to talk to anybody, you just want to come park and get out and go walk like you're in a park, you can do that. And it's, whether we just miss you or we're busy, like you may not even get greeted and, until you walk by a certain place. And that's really not great for, for sales and for customer experience. And so that's the bigger picture. The other aspect of that that's interesting is Greenville has this really amazing system of trails and greenway called the Swamp Rabbit Trail. And there is an expansion plan to bring the trail along the section of the Reedy River that borders our property. And I had a conversation a couple weeks after closing with a guy from the city. And I was just like, I want you to know I am all in on this. Like if you guys can find the political will and get buy-in from the other landowners along this path to do it, I am all in, like we'll figure it out. And if we did that, it would create the opportunity for a much more like serving walk-up customers kind of business model, probably with food and drink and maybe some entertainment. And like there's examples of other very successful businesses along that trail that have done that. And so that's kind of I like to dream about what that could look like, so that's like further out. I think the path to get there is just to double down on the selection and the service that we're known for, and just make sure that there's nobody in Greenville. Like the population's grown so much and it's projected to continue to grow, which is a great tailwind to have for in-person retail. But you just have to double down on that loyal, fanatical core of people that do want to get that text every single time you get plants. And then just making sure that like anytime you're doing anything, that everybody who can possibly hear about it hears about it, and through newsletter and through ads and stuff like that. And so we're just at the beginning of that, I would say, and we've seen positive results. I mean, I sent out that SP Club thing, and within a week, I think I had like 100 people sign up, and we've grown our newsletter a lot since pushing for it, and But there's just all kinds of little things like, oh yeah, I need signs in the store with QR codes to get people to sign up, and like someone's got to make those, and that's going to be me.
You.
So,
yeah, exactly.
I've got to do that.
Very cool. I mean, I think that you're on the right track. I mean, the young business owner, brand new energy is real. I love it. But very cool. I agree with your thesis. I think that that's the move for a lot of in-store retail, is to become an experiential kind of move. Very cool. So Rory, as you go on your journey, where can people find you, follow along, see these newsletters? What's the spot?
Yeah, well, we're revamping our website, so I would say you can go to the website and sign up for the newsletter, but it's not quite there yet. So, I mean, in the meantime, following me on Twitter or LinkedIn is probably just Rory Tyer. There's really nobody else with my name, so you would probably find me. But yeah, I love. I'm passionate about entrepreneurship through acquisition, because so far it has been like a huge net positive for me and my family. And I think I'm giving my girls just a different perspective on what's possible than I had growing up. And my parents are wonderful, but they weren't entrepreneurs. And this is not something either of them did. And so, regardless of how this ends up, I'm going to show my kids, like, this is something you can pursue. But yeah, Twitter, LinkedIn, you can shoot me an email. But those Twitter, LinkedIn are the best places to get a hold of me if you want to chat.
Very cool. All right, guys. Well, thank you for listening. If you like what you heard today, go ahead, leave us a 5-star review wherever you listen, as well as follow us at ownedandoperated.com. Sign up for the newsletter, join the Facebook page, all of the 10,000 things you can do to interact with us. So appreciate y'all for listening, and thank you, Rory, for coming on today.
You're welcome, man. Good to talk with you.
Awesome.